might just talk long and keep y'all home.
Senator, what is the president's mood today with regard to progress on the shutdown? What's going to happen?
Well, we had a 2-hour lunch and I had a very enjoyable lunch. He's anything, he's not a man under siege. The president is firm in his commitment to make sure we get money for border security, and there'll never be a 60-vote deal in the Senate that doesn't include money for border security / wall. And I don't see Democrats giving us more money unless they get something. So the one thing we talked about is making deals. Now there's a lot of distrust in town, and I guess you can blame both sides for that. But after lunch, I've never been more encouraged. If we can get people talking, we can find our way out of this mess. And that would include around $5 billion for border security / wall / fencing, whatever you want to call it, in areas that make sense, and deal with another problem that's looming. I think the president's eventually going to win his court case regarding DACA. The president has put on the table several times relief for the DACA population. Since we're talking about $5 billion for border security, not $25 billion, we're probably going to have to scale things back. So I think it's possible, if we start talking to each other, to have a deal that would provide relief to the DACA population. It's called the Bridge Act. Senator Durbin and I introduced this 3 years ago. It would give work permits for all DACA eligible recipients, about 700,000, so they could go to school, go to work, and not fear having their legal status changed anytime soon. The bill says 3 years, one-time renewable. The TPS recipients, about 400,000 people came to America for the last 20 or 30 years, fleeing war zones, natural disasters, and their legal status is about to run out. There's a lot of sympathy for this population in the Congress, and I think the president is very open-minded about this dilemma. So what I mentioned today as an outline of a potential breakthrough would be $5 billion for wall / border security, the Bridge Act, and TPS reform. I think that's in the realm of possibility. The president didn't commit, but I think he's very open-minded. I know there's some Democrats out there who would be willing to provide money for wall border security if we could deal with the DACA population and TPS people. And hopefully we can get some serious discussions started maybe as soon as next week.
Senator Graham, would the president be willing to put pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients on the table, or just a one-time?
Not for $5 billion. I'm not willing to do that. I've done every combination of immigration reform pretty much known to mankind. The deal we had in February is not going to be replicated. We're not going to do $25 billion and dream at with a pathway to citizenship. But I do think we can do $5 billion for the Bridge Act, which would give the same population work permits and give them legal status. And the TPS population, they're in pretty bad way right now. I think we could get that on the table.
Senator, after you outlined this to President Trump, what were the first words out of his mouth?
Interesting.
And his body language?
We had a great lunch. We talked about Syria, and he told me some things I didn't know that make me feel a lot better about where we're headed in Syria. He promised to destroy ISIS. He's going to keep that promise. We're not there yet, but as I said today, we're inside the 10-yard line, and the president understands the need to finish the job. He's worried about Iranian influence and the potential dangers to Israel from having a superhighway from Beirut to Tehran in terms of delivering weapons into Lebanon. And he will be talking to Turkey about making sure we don't have a war between the Turks and our allies, the Kurds. So I like what I heard. We still have some differences, but I will tell you that the president is thinking long and hard about Syria, how to withdraw our forces, but at the same time achieve our national security interests, which are to make sure that ISIS is destroyed, they never come back, that our allies, the Kurds, are protected, and that Iran doesn't become the big winner of our leaving. And I feel pretty good about where we're headed. And I told the president his trip to Iraq was much appreciated. I think he learned a lot, and I certainly learned a lot from him today. So on multiple fronts, the president's in a good mood, and he feels like he's got to deliver on the promise of securing our border, and he's very open-minded about combining wall funding with other things to make it a win-win for the country.
Question about that, because the semantics are so important to this debate. Right now, how is the president defining border security? How is he defining the wall?
Well, he's got a $5.6 billion appropriation that was sent over from the House. Look at that. I think that appropriation is what we need and what he wants. And $5 billion, given the context of what was sent over from the House, plus other things, I think, is in the realm of possibility.
If a DACA for wall trade didn't work in the past, what makes him and you think it might work now with the House now going to...
Well, it was never just DACA for the wall. It was a lot of moving parts. The diversity lottery was ended. We were arguing about how to transition to merit-based immigration. So the president did put a pathway to citizenship on the table for 1.8 million dreamers, but he also wanted to go to a merit-based immigration, and that was a bridge too far, no pun intended. I think we have a chance here to end 2018 or begin 2019 with a breakthrough on immigration. A $5 billion appropriation wisely spent would go a long way to securing our border. It's just not about physical barriers, it's about other things. And if we could find a way to make sure that the DACA recipients have a work permit, it certainly makes their lives better. The TPS population, I think all of us are trying to find a way to help them. So there's a deal to be had, I think.
Is the president willing to back off the term wall more, since Democrats want to talk about technology and other kinds of barriers? Is he prepared to say it doesn't have to be a wall?
All I can tell you is that Democrats have voted for 700 miles of the Secure Fence Act that had double-layered fencing. Call that whatever you'd like. In the Gang of 8 bill, we had $42 billion for border security, including $9 billion for physical barriers. The wall has become a metaphor for border security. And what we're talking about is a physical barrier where it makes sense. In the past, every Democrat has voted for these physical barriers. It can't be just about because Trump wants it, we no longer agree with it. There's nothing immoral about a physical barrier along the border in places that make sense. So there'll never be a deal at the end of this year, the beginning of the next, that doesn't have money for the physical barriers that we all have in the past agreed we need. The president is not asking for too much. And we're going to put on the table some ideas that have been embraced in the past. The question is, can we stop hating each other enough up here to find a way forward that'd be a win-win? The president was upbeat, he was in a very good mood, and I think he's receptive to making a deal if it achieves his goals of securing our border. And I think we can get there if everybody will start talking to each other.
In the last week, we've seen the president have 2 high-profile border security lunches. Not that we're not happy to see you, but you're not a Democrat. Democrats weren't at a meeting he had the other week. It was just Republican lawmakers. Why aren't Democrats coming over here? Did he ask you to bring any? Should you have brought some with you? When can we see Senator?
Well, it's pretty hard to get here from Hawaii, but the phones do work.
What about last week?
So all I can say is that the Democrats have said they're not going to give him a dime for a border wall. The House will change next week. They're going to send over to a bill from the House. They won't have any money for a physical barrier, wall, fence, artistically designed slats, and that's not going to fly. So the approach the Democrats have taken have made it pretty hard to have a discussion. They're telling us what they won't do. After lunch today, I think the president is telling us what he wants, and he's willing to do some things to get what he wants. And to my Democratic friends, there's some things that you want that can be had if you agree to border security in a reasonable way. The reason we're not talking is because the House Democrats have told us there's no way, no how you're going to get anything you want.
Senator, did you talk to the president, I apologize I'm late, but did you talk to the president about slowing down the Syria troop withdrawals, perhaps reconsidering that?
I think the president's trip to Iraq was eye-opening. The commanders there told him that ISIS was in a world of hurt, not completely destroyed, but well on their way. I think operations to completely destroy and decimate ISIS are going to be ongoing and are going to be accelerated. So the president assured me that he's going to make sure he gets the job done, and I assured him that nobody has done more to defeat ISIS than he has. We're inside the 10-yard line. Then you got the Kurds that we need to be concerned about. They stepped up when nobody else would, and he's very aware of that problem. He's going to be talking to Turkey about assuring Turkey that they will have a buffer zone that they need, given their concerns about the YPG Kurds. But the last thing in the world we want is a war between Turkey and the Kurds. That takes pressure off ISIS. And the last thing we want, in addition to that, is Iran to be the big winner here. So I think the president's going to finish the job when it comes to ISIS. I share his goal to withdraw our forces from Syria. I just want to do it in a smart way, make sure that Iran's not the big winner. And after the discussions with the president and General Dunford, I've never felt better about where we're headed. I think we're slowing things down in a smart way, but the goal has always been the same, to be able to leave Syria, make sure ISIS never comes back, our partners are taken care of, and Iran's contained, and I think that's possible. It's going to take a little longer than everybody thought, but hopefully we can get there. Thank you.
You wanted him to reconsider on Syria after your meeting. Do you think that's what he's doing?
I think the president has come up with a plan with his generals that makes sense to me. The goal is to make sure ISIS doesn't come back. We left Iraq too soon. We had them on the ropes in Iraq, left too soon. I think the president's very committed to making sure that when we leave Syria, that ISIS is completely defeated and we're inside the 10-yard line. And the Iran-Kurd situation has to be dealt with. So I think we're in a pause situation where we're reevaluating what's the best way to achieve the president's objective of having people pay more and do more. We have the British and the French still in Syria. God bless them. But the region needs to put some money into Syria. How do you hold Raqqa that's completely destroyed without having somebody help rebuild it? I think the president is right that the rebuilding should come from the region. And we'll see what happens here in the next few weeks. But I feel better about Syria than I felt before I had lunch. I think the president's taking this really seriously, and the trip to Iraq was well timed. Thanks.
So is he open to